So that was the first thing I really wanted to talk about, is that there are so many things in Blender. The biggest thing is not to get overwhelmed. So you have file, edit, render, window, modeling, sculpting, UV editing, texture paint, shading, blah, 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 ad nauseum. You probably are only going to be using it for a few things, and you're only going to have to concentrate on a few things, depending on what you want to do. So don't get intimidated. Don't feel like you have to. I don't think there's anybody out there who knows all of Blender inside and out, every single part of it. But, you could become an expert at one part or a few parts, depending on what you want to learn. I used to do a lot of texturing in Blender until they changed to cycles exclusively, and then I kind of got away from that. And now I'm using Substance Painter, which I like a lot too. But that's another thing about Blender. There are a lot of add-ons. Some of them are free and some of them cost money. So I did find an add-on for texturing the way it used to be, which is called Simple Bake, which I got, and I can still texture using that in Blender, but Substance Painter is so much better, just in the way that the textures come out. But anyway, so basically with your startup file, you can change it to however you want it to be. Now, the version that I'm using right here of Blender is 3.6. And I also have a 4.3 Blender version. The reason I still use 3.6 is because I use Avastar a lot for rigging clothes, and there is no 4.0 version yet. So I still have to stay with the 3 series version until they update that. So I am using 2 different versions. They're slightly different, of course. Blender's free. They come out with different versions, usually a few times a year. So they're up to 4.3, I think. And no, I do not get the newest version right away or jump and get it right away. I kind of wait a little while and make sure there aren't too many glitches, because it's like OpenSim. It's a volunteer developer product, so there will be glitches, and they expect people to find them and then fix them with fixes later. So I'd rather be on the more stable version. So I'm on 3.6 in this version. A couple of things I just wanted to show you that you probably will be using, and that's you're going to start in object mode. And here we have view, select, and add. So let's just add we're actually going to add, there's a little under mesh, a little monkey. So we'll just add that monkey. Now, if you have a keyboard that has number keys, they're really helpful. You can use them to do rotating. I use the number key 4, and that rotates it sideways. 2 will rotate it upside down. 8 will rotate it the other way. Always hit number pad 1, and that will bring you back to the normal view if you're all messed up. Also, these little gizmo pad here will also, if you press on the whatever rotation you want, it will do it for you, but in big steps. So the number pad, if you have it, does more subtle steps, but also, like, see, now the sky's upside down. If I just press my number pad 1, he goes back to the regular view. So he's in object mode right now. Now, if you use your tab, you'll see all these orange points are vertices, which is what he's made of, and they get highlighted. So basically, edit mode helps you with vertices, and you can do a bunch of things with him here. But the one thing I want to do is see how he looks like really like chunky and kind of like he got boxy and he got like squares and stuff. So what I can do with him is, now anything you want to do with vertices or triangles, usually you have to be in edit mode. So edit mode, and then if he's not selected, I could do select none, or I could do select all up here, and that will select everything. What I want to do is go to, you have view, select, add, mesh. That's the different meshes you can add in, the vertex, edge, face, and UV. So vertex, if you go in here, I just want to go to the smooth vertex here, and that smooths him out considerably. He's still a little chunky, but it smooths him out. I could even probably smooth him more by going to smooth Laplacian. But he's going to stay boxy because he's very low poly. So that's another thing. Now up here on the right is little, well, first we have the gizmos, then we have some overlays, and this actually over here, that looks like this is an X-ray. This will show him as if you look through him and he's clear. It doesn't really, you can't really notice it too much right now, but it is an X-ray that could be useful for selecting certain things. But next to that is, let's take that off and he's solid again. This is wireframe. It just shows, it doesn't show the actual faces. It just shows the edges of the vertices, and usually won't be using that probably. And then you have just the solid shader, and then you have a viewport shading, and then here this is, you can't see anything right now because he doesn't have any textures or whatever, but this is the, what if he had textures on him, it would show up in this last view over here. But I usually, just for all intents and purposes, just use this first solid shader. It's the most convenient. What was I going to say? I was going to say about, so also here, if you click on this little arrow here, the one over, I'm looking for, here you go, the overlays. I like to have my statistics clicked on because this will show you that I have one object. It's 507 vertices, 1,005 edges, etc. But the vertices is what's important. So when you're importing something from somewhere, like let's say you got something from on the web or something, you want to have your vertex on here because you want to make sure that it's under 65,000. Otherwise, it won't upload. So that's something that is helpful. And when I set up my screen to be saved as it is, I always try to have my statistics on so that I can always keep track of how much an object is. So then besides that, all those things on the top. So basically, I don't look at any of this stuff over here. Maybe sometimes UV editing, not even texture paint, shading, animation. I don't do any of that. Other people use it, not me. I'm mostly just bringing in objects and maybe changing them or making clothes from scratch. And I use some add-ons for that also. So basically this part, and then the object mode, edit, sculpt mode is something that you use. Weight paint is what you use for after you rig clothing to get it fitted better. But basically on the side here, you have these gizmos. So this is your move, and that corresponds with these arrows here. So you can just, and it's very similar to doing stuff in World Whip Build, which is convenient. So you'd be dragging it along or drag it up and down. And just remember that this little circle here in the middle of the screen is your center point. So that's helpful to keep stuff centered as best you can. Then you have, just like in World, you have a rotate where you can rotate in all directions. And a big thing that you use in Blender is a Control Z to get back to where you were. You can Control Z. You can also, a thing that we use is the undo history. So the undo history is under edit here. So sometimes when you're Control Zing, it only goes back a few steps for whatever reason, or doesn't go back after a step or two. I'm not sure why, but if you go to your undo history, it'll go all the way back. So it goes all the way back to when I first started. And you can actually set it up for like 256 steps. You can set it up. And I find that helpful because if you're working on something for an hour and you need to go back, you say, oh crap, you need to go back to a time frame way before where you are now because it's all messed up. You can go back. You can also do a Control S on your computer and you can save the blend file so that if something happens, you can go right back and here you can go to File, Open, and you can find your blend file and open recent, which is this one, and you can open your last job, and that's also saved me because Blender does have crashes. Sometimes you'll be working on something for an hour and it'll just crash and you'll lose all your work. So it is good to either export your work or save the actual blend file. And to export, well, let me just go back to move on this guy. You would do File, and then you'd go down here, Export, and you have really a million different kinds of mesh files that you can save it as. You can add, that's another thing you could do. You can add more import, export types. This has the basics already. Of course, we're using Collada as a day file. So we would export it as monkey, let's say. We want to click selection only, and we would export it, and then we can actually bring it back in again. I'm just going to find him, the monkey, and just import Collada, and he's back again. Okay, he's like a bad rash. He doesn't go away. So we have the move, the rotate. Here you have the scale, which will, just like in World, you can scale him. You can actually just hit the S key and then slide your mouse, and that will make him bigger or smaller. Then a really interesting tool that they have below that is a transform, and this is a multi-use transform gizmo, which I really like, which would be really helpful if they had it in the viewer. You can do everything actually with one gizmo. So you could see here they have the scale, they have the move, and they have the rotate all in one function. So that's kind of neat. I use that from time to time. So that's basically all the basic functions that you would need. Importing, exporting. For importing, of course, let's get rid of this guy. X is to delete. So you have to always have, when you're on something, if it's highlighted in orange, then you know that you're on that, and you just hit your X and then just hit delete, and that gets rid of him. So let's see, I don't really have that much right now on my desktop, but I think I have no, it's not coming in. Sometimes with Blender also, we find that we save things as OBJ files. instead of day files, and sometimes that actually works out better. So let's try. And that's not coming up either. That's interesting. And that's not coming. That's coming up with the last thing that I made, which is I just recently, actually I'm wearing it now. I made a bra, so we can look at this. So when you bring something in, you're going to see that all your gizmos and stuff are kind of like, they're not like in the center. So, and it's much easier is if they're on the object itself and not below. So to fix that, what you want to do is you want to go into object mode and you do set origin, and you could either do center of mass or volume. And that brings your cursor and your gizmo right towards the middle instead of the bottom. And I don't know why it doesn't save that transformation when you export it, but that's how you always get it back to where it's right in the middle. So this bra I actually made from a copy of a Athena body that I have that's a day file, and I kind of just selected certain faces and pieces and did a shift D and copied it, and then solidified it and did all kinds of things to it and made it into a bra and then rigged it. But what I wanted to show you is another helpful thing. On the right hand side here, you'll see these, and you'll be working with some of these. One of the most important things that we use here is this wrench, and this is modifiers. And this, you can do a lot of things with the modifiers that you might want to do. Solidify is one of them. You have all this stuff, UV, a lot of stuff I don't use. A lot of people don't use. One thing I know they were talking about it before was decimate. So right now the vertices for this is 1488. It's really at a good point. I might actually want to make this even more complex than it is right now. So I'm going to go to my modifiers here and add modifier. And I'm going to go to subdivision surface. And this will, and here I can change the level, let's say to 2. And as you can see now, all of a sudden it changed from 1488 vertices. Now it's up to 35. So this is, if you have something, if you've gotten something from the web, let's say, and it's really, really low poly and blocky looking and stuff, when you do subdivide your vertices and make more vertices and edges and everything, it does let you have more detail and does show more detail when you get it in world. But again, you want to watch out that you don't have, I think the new Firestorm, we've been able to upload stuff that's like 100,000 vertices, but generally the older ones, you can't do more than 65,000. It'll tell you that it's too complex. So just like I said, keep your eye on the statistics. That's really important. Other things that we have on this side panel is the output, the render, and the output, which is stuff that you might use if you're going to be using this for texturing. You also have in the modifiers also, again, the wrench, you have smooth, you have solidify, which is something that we did before, but that will, you could see it made it like thicker. I'm gonna do that again so you can see it up close. So we're going to go to solidify, and it made it thicker. And what it does is actually, when you first have a piece, it's usually only one-sided. So if you look on the inside of it, it'll look clear or transparent. So when you solidify it, it's going to give it two faces, a front and a back face. And that's, really important for a lot of things, but especially clothing. You want to have an inside and outside of your clothes. So that's your solidify. Let me just turn it back. Now, also from here, you can see that this is red. Now, if you go down here, you will have a material button. And when you open that up, it'll say, right now it's saying material 0, and it's red, and the base color is red. So actually, you can change this base color. You can go to open it over here by this yellow dot. And when you open it, you don't necessarily have to change the color. You can actually hit image texture, and you can come here where it says open. Now this comes up and says open, and you can, I just have this gold belt here, and you can put the gold belt in. Now you won't see it right now, but if you go over here to the render screen, well, you're not really seeing it too well because it's not baked or anything, but this is a gold belt texture, so you could see it's no longer the red. But you can also go into and just change there's other things you can change, brick texture. There's all kinds of magic textures there, sky texture. You can also just change it to a different color. If you don't like this, you can, as long as you're in object mode here, you could get rid of that material completely and start with a new one. You can double click this and name it. So I'm going to name it broad texture, let's say. You can click on the base color, and you can change the base color here using the color wheel. Or like I said, you can click on this yellow little dot here, and you can change your image texture and then bake it in. I don't, like I said, usually do cycles. So I usually use Substance Painter at this point to do most textures, but I can still do textures. Now, if I highlight this, and remember I said to split the screen, the reason is because down here, so right now, this is the mode we're in. These are all the different modes you can look at your screen at. And again, we're only, just like everything with Blender, we're probably only going to use a few. 3D viewport and the UV editor are the ones I use mostly. You might use different ones. Timeline is for animations if you were doing that. Asset browser shows you stuff that you might have uploaded. But so I'm going to, now this I'm keeping at 3D viewport, but here the bottom split that I made, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to change it to UV editor. So now that I have this highlighted, I'm going to do a U, hit my U, and then hit unwrap, and it's saying its edge seams may need to be added. I usually use a smart UV unwrap because that works. And here it is. So what it unwrap is just like taking your 3D and your 3D model and unrolling it and putting it flat on the ground, just like you would take a globe and cut it up and put it on the ground flat, and it would have wings and stuff, but it would be the actual globe flattened out. So it's the same kind of thing. As you can see here, it's the raw, but it's flattened out. And this is helpful. You need to have it unwrapped if you're going to be texturing it in another program. And even like a lot of stuff is unwrapped really good. So like a t-shirt will look like a t-shirt on the UV wrap. and then you can use that as a guide to do texturing in something like Photoshop or GIMP, which I know Nexus is very familiar with doing. So that's what I would use this for. Most things, though, if you are going to be texturing it and you want to use the breakup of it as a UV, you're going to want to do the UV unwrap here. So there's all kinds of things you can do with UVs, but that's for another day. So basically at this point, I would be able to take this and then export it as either an OBJ or a day file, and then I would have to rig it if I was going to be wearing it. Not necessarily everything I have. I do a lot of furniture and stuff too, but if you're not going to be rigging it, I could just save it as a day and then just import it back into Neverworld. So that's it, and that's like really good for if you found something online that you want to bring in. Sometimes they have textures. If you find something as a GLB, it already has textures baked onto it, and you just bring it in here. You would just bring it in, import as a GLB file, and then you'd export it as a day file, and you should be able to bring it in World with the textures already baked onto it. So it would be easy peasy. Let's see, another thing that's important to know is right by this edit, you have these little boxes here, and that is the type of the mesh that you're going to be selecting. So right now we're on vertex. That's all these triangles here. You can edge select. If you do this, you can see it's the vertices has the little dots and they look like triangles. If you do the edge select, you don't have the triangles, and you can select just by clicking. You can select all of these, and there's a bunch of things you can do with edges, including filling in blank spaces that have no faces. And then you have the face select, which is the face select is all these flat pieces are faces. So this item right now is in triangles. I prefer, you can either use triangles or quads are more like square. So what you can do is, I have to find it. In face, I'm going to change my tries to quads. And when you watch this, you'll see it made more, instead of triangle or diamond shapes, it made them more square. So let's say I'm just going to see if I can delete this face. And no, I can't very easily because it's too solidified. Okay. So here you could see I just made a hole here. So usually if you click on two edges, top and bottom, and hit F on your keyboard, it will fill in the space that was empty. So I'm going to show you that again. It's a circle, but it would usually be this whole square might be missing for one reason or another. If I select my edge, and then to add more than one side, I want to hit my shift button. So you could see there's two sides selected. This is white, this is orange. So, and then I'm going to hit my F key, and that will just fill with the face. So that's helpful, I find. Let's see. Is everybody following along? I'm sorry that it's a bra. let's see. The next thing I want to show you is add-ons. So, like I said, we can have a startup file. Here, defaults, save startup file or load factory settings. I'm going to actually close it and go back to my regular startup file. So, new, general, and let's see, open Lord Development Kit. This is basically my startup file for Avastar and everything. So let me just save this. Save startup file. So now if I close this out and go new, oh, it didn't save it. That's weird. Let's see. Open. Okay. Let's see. Save startup file. So now if I go new general, there I am. So there are a lot of add-ons in Blender. Some of them are already preloaded. Some of them you can find free. And you can find on superhive.com, I believe it is, which used to be the Blender Market. And there's all thousands of add-ons there. But there's some that are free, so you can look around. But if you wanted to add something, what you would do is you'd go to edit and you'd go to preferences, and this shows everything that you have right now. And I mean, they're still here installed, but they're not enabled right now because I went to factory settings to show you. But there's all kinds of things. So some of the ones that I like that are really fun is the ivy generator, sapling tree generator, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes. The ant landscape, which can make mesh mountains and stuff. Archie Mesh makes a little bit of like buildings, but they're I've made ones with them, but they're kind of fun. Geodesic domes. So you just want anything that you might want to keep or use again, you would just enable again. So here you have all your import exports, and right now I'm just looking. I have STL, UV layout, OBJ, GLTF files, and you can add more than that. Quad remesher, that's something that I use a lot. Avastar, of course, I use for rigging, and so on. So, so I've just enabled a bunch of things. I'm going to get rid of this guy. And let's see if we can add in a tree. So here on the bottom, you have view. Mostly just, we don't use it that much. Select will help you select stuff when you're working on something, but I usually mostly use select all. Add, you can add an Avastar for me, lights, a lattice, which I don't use that much, grease pencil, I don't use this much. Text, you can actually do text on here pretty easily, and then mesh, and that has some stuff, and then curves are some drawing tools, but in the curves is the sapling tree generator, which comes in Blender, and it's under curves here, so add curve sapling tree generator, and it comes out with the tree. So what you do is as soon as it comes up, you get this sapling add tree little menu here. And if you click on that and open it, it gives you all kinds of really cool things you can do. So with branch radius, you can just fool around and change the amount of, your trunk, how thick it is, branch splitting, how many times do you want the branches to split, levels, how much do you want, trunk height, you can make it taller, and then leaves, you can add different kinds of leaves. You want to click on this show leaves here, and here it looks like a ginkgo, all different kinds of neat leaves if you want. Then you can also do pruning. Well, I believe make it a little smaller. And then I'm frozen right now. Let's see. If you go to geometry, you can change the type of tree it is here under shape. So you can make it conical or a flame type. You can make it other tapered cylindrical. It's a really pretty cool function. And then once you get this, you have really essentially two different pieces. You have leaves and you have the branches. And you could actually, right now over here on the right, will show everything that you have worked on. And all this stuff up here was from my Avastar. That was all my body and the bones and everything for Avastar. But here on the bottom, that's usually the last thing you worked on, and that would be your tree. So as you can see, it has a curve thing here. So it's not quite, it's still a curve. It's not actually a mesh. So you can't really export it yet until you convert it. But all you do is you go into object mode here, and then you just find convert, where is it? Convert, and we're going to convert it to the triangle, which is the mesh. So now you can see it change to that. So now we could actually select both pieces and export it as a collada. So we'll just call it tree. And just I need to enable my statistics to see how big it is. Oh, it's 399,000. So we will be decimating this before we can actually save it. This 399 has to be under 65,000. So this is the perfect example. So we're going to go over here on the right hand side to the wrench, which is the modifiers, add modifier, and we're going to find the decimate. And then we're just going to under ratio here. That's really the only thing you have to do. We're going to slide this, keep sliding it down. And as you can see, the vertices are getting less. So we're going to slide it down quite considerably. In fact, that is too much. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to bring them in world in two different pieces. So let's export this as tree branch. And then let's export this as, and I'm highlighting the ones I'm exporting as tree leaves. Now let's see if I can bring them in world. Now I have the most recent the most recent Firestorm I'm using. So it can bring in pretty complex objects. So this is usually if it's over 10 megabytes, it's going to be too complex. But with this new Firestorm, it does let you. So even though it's saying that it's 135,000, I can upload it. And I just uploaded the branches, so I'm uploading it right now, rather. And let's see. So one thing with doing something so complex like this is you can see it has holes in it, which is an artifact from being so complex. But you would fix that by not having as many branches and stuff. But I'm going to just put a bark texture on it for now, just to say, and let's see what happens with the leaves, if I can do the leaves. Oh, the tree leaves, oh my God, they're very complex. So let me get rid of the branches, and then with these, I am going to, again, go in, decimate, and bring that way down. And save it as tree leaves. Let's see if I can get that in. Tree leaves. Oops, what happened? When you are exporting something, one thing I wanted to mention is I've used a modifier. So you want to go in this tab here, you want to click selection only. If you have other things on it will just pick that one that you highlighted. Then you want to go into this geometry tab and just click on this apply modifiers, and that will apply your decimation where you reduce the size of it. So let's see now when I go to bring it in, upload, mesh model, tree leaf. So it went from 33 megabytes to 3.54 megabytes. So it went down by like 100. Let's see if it could come up. But that was a very complex tree. Of course, if you were going to fool around with the tree, and there's all kinds of trees. There's pine trees, there's cedar trees that you can work. And it's not coming up for some reason, which is fine. So I just wanted to show you that that's an add-on that's free that you can use. Other add-ons are the mesh mountain generator, which is pretty fun. Let's go. But again, I'm going to highlight this X on my keyboard, delete, get rid of that. For the adding the mesh, you have cube, which if you look at the cube, it's just like a prim. If you go here and change this to UV editor, you'll see it unwrapped perfectly like that. So that's when you tab. And this part of your screen shows in edit mode. This part shows in 3D mode. If you wanted to duplicate this, you would just do Shift and D, and that will make an exact copy of that. And then you can just take your cursor and move it. Okay. If you want to take two pieces and you want to combine them, you click one, and then you shift and you click the other one with your mouse, and then you do a Control J, and that will make it into one piece. Then you can see when you move, it will move both pieces, and it's saying up here, objects is one. So let's go back to this. You see, we have two objects here. When you Control J, you combine the two objects, and now it's one object. Okay, now what you can do is, let's go back again, and we're going to assign each one a different color. So this one, we're going to hit this material button here, new. We're going to change it Cube A, we're going to call it. And then we're going to go into this texture, open. I don't have really too many textures right now. Let's see here. You still can't really see it, but it is going to be that color, and or rather that texture. And let's go on to the next one, and we're going to add a material, and we're going to call it Cube B, and I'm going to add a texture here, and I'm going to change that to whatever this was. Okay, now if I come down here, I have cube, and this highlights what you're on. Click on the next one, it's Cube 1. Click them together, Control J, and I've combined it, and it's cube. Now if I look down here at the cube, I'm going to pull that out. I'll have two textures, Cube A and Cube B. So now I have one prim, and it will have two textures on it. So basically I can export it, automatically pack. I don't know if that will work with this, but I can export it just as cubes, let's say. And it exported just one object, so it should just be one prim. So I can upload it here as a mesh model. Cubes. Upload. So it's one cube. Each one can have a texture. Oops. Let's get a better texture, pink polka dots. And let's say for this texture, some kind of stripe. Okay, so this prim is one, this box was the two cubes, and it's now made into one prim, and it has two textures on it. So that's how you can combine something and that was two prims and make it into one prim but have two materials on it so that each one can be. So that's very helpful in reducing your prim count. And I do that all the time with furniture. I have complex furniture and it ends up being one prim, and it might be 7 different textures on it, but it's still one prim when you bring it in. So that's a helpful thing to know. Along those lines, so you have the one piece now. Now let's do the opposite, and let's say we wanted to take the one piece and we want to separate it into pieces. So I highlight the whole thing and I hit my P key in edit mode. You have to be in edit mode. And I hit P, and I'm going to separate. In this case, I have 2 different materials, so I can separate by material. Usually can separate by material if you have to. Separate selection doesn't really work that well, so I usually separate by material, and that will separate different pieces, but keep like pieces of all one material together, which is helpful actually. Let's say I had a table that I wanted to separate. If I separated it by material, it would, let's say, separate the table legs all as one piece, but the tabletop might be separated different because it's a different material. So by material usually works. In this case, if you have to, you can do by loose parts. Sometimes you have to, but in this case, so it has now separated those 2 boxes back into 2 separate boxes. So we have the 1 cube and the 2 cube. And that's really it, what I wanted to show you today. I think, if okay, I'm going to mute my media if I can here. I'm not sure if I can. Yes. I'm going to mute my media here, and then I'm going to go to voice and we can talk. So let's see. One second.